be difficult with a handheld mic. It's working. Can you guys hear me? Good afternoon. Space is a curious word. It conjures up mystery. It conjures up distance. It conjures up vastness. But what is really interesting to me is when people, ordinary people, use the communication platforms of their time to do remarkable things. My mother grew up as one of three. She was an Air Force brat. And at the age of 17, she met my father and fell madly in love. She fell so madly in love that she decided she wasn't going to go to college. She was going to get married, have babies, and live happily ever after. Well, that's exactly what she did. She got engaged at 18, married at 20. I was born when she was 21, and then my sister and brother followed in due course of time, my brother being the youngest. Everything was going swimmingly, and then when my brother was of an age to attend Montessori school, my mother got a job teaching there part-time so that she didn't have to be separated from him during the day. She enjoyed it, so much so that when he graduated from Montessori school and went into a regular school, she realized that she wanted to continue teaching as her career. Now, I don't know how it is these days, but back in the day, and we're talking about the early 80s, early to mid 80s, to be a teacher in India, i.e. to get paid very little money to shape the minds of future leaders, you had to have not only graduated from college, but also have earned a bachelor's in education, a B.Ed. Otherwise, you couldn't qualify to even be appointed to certain positions. You couldn't be eligible for the full-time government benefits that would come to you, and so on. So clearly, this was a problem for my mother. Now, it wasn't an option for her to go back to school. She was, by this time, teaching at a regular school, not as a fully qualified teacher. She was a full-time wife and mother, and so clearly that was out of the question. So she decided to embark on what was then called distance education. It was fairly new in India at the time, but it was the precursor of today's online education. And a fairly reputed school, fairly reputed, mind you, had started offering these distance programs for adults who had not been able to complete their college and wanted to go back to school. So my mother did just that. She enrolled in a distance education program. She would work during the day. She would carry out her roles of full-time mother and wife as well. And by night, she would study. And I was so proud when I graduated from college, she graduated that same year. She didn't just stop there, though. She got her BA. Then she got that dratted B.Ed. Then she got her master's degree. And a few years ago, when she retired, after an illustrious 30-something year career as not just a very senior teacher, but also a senior administrator in one of India's most respected schools, she is a published author several times over. And her textbooks are used to this day by high school students across India as they prepare for their national board exams. My mother conquered the space between. Today is very special for me. First of all, I'm privileged and thrilled and excited and nervous and honored and all of the epithets you can think of to be here. But my husband's here with me today. And over the last several years that I have been privileged to do speaking engagements, this is the first one that he's come to. And when people meet me for the first time, or after having come into contact with me, perhaps online or at another forum, and there are two questions they usually ask me. There are several, but there are two that come up often. The first is, how did you learn to speak such good English? And I say, at school, where did you learn to speak English? And the second question they often ask me is how I ended up here doing what I do. How did I come to be in this world of digital media and public relations? And I always tell them it's because of my husband. Because if I hadn't met him and married him, I would never have come to the US. And Ketty's already let you know that we met online. And if I hadn't come to the US, then I wouldn't have the life and career that I know today. I would have been someone completely different, doing something possibly completely different. And so, of course, then they want to know how we met, and I say online, and they go, ah, because, of course, now that's not that common, right? Many people, I know some of you in this room, have either are in relationships or have been in relationships that started online. And then they want to know more details about the story, and so I tell them how it evolved. And the smile usually turns to a stunned look when I tell them that we actually met in person 10 days before our wedding, which was in Calcutta, India, which John flew to from Woodland Hills, California, for the first time in his life to marry me. And they say, "Were you crazy? Why did you do that? How did you do that?" One of my friends even said, "But Shonali, how do you know he doesn't snore?" And I said, if he snores, he snores. Earplugs. And they say, "You didn't know him." And I always say, but I did know him. Because by the time we met, from the time we met online in September of 1998, up until the time we got married, which was July of 1999, I had 4 binders, this thick, of emails that John would write to me twice a day. And if I missed an email from him, God forbid, the heavens would come collapsing and I'd be freaking out saying, "What's wrong with you? Why didn't you write to me?" But I had all these lovely letters from him. We would talk on the phone starting off once a week, then it became more. So I knew him. I knew his days, I knew his nights, I knew what made him happy, I knew what made him sad, I knew what was going on with his life, and he knew the same things about me. So when the time came for me to tell my family and friends, they knew who I was marrying. Next year, we'll celebrate our 14th wedding anniversary. And when I look back to that wonderful year in 1999 when John and I got married in India, there are so many wonderful memories I have. But one of my favorite memories is that of bringing John home for the first time to meet my parents. Now, my house in India is set away from the street, so you have to go through this outer gate, then you have to walk up this very long and narrow alley, go through an inner gate, and then you get to my house. So as we were walking up, our dogs, we're a family of dog lovers, started barking, so everybody knew that the son-in-law-to-be had arrived. And my father was standing on the steps of the house. And the minute he saw John, he threw his arms wide open and he clasped him in this bear hug. His face broke into a smile. And he said, "Welcome home, son." The space between them just collapsed. This is my friend Jennifer Staus-Windram and her mother Leslie Lerman. Jennifer is, like so many of my friends, someone I met through the digital space. We have not physically encountered each other yet. But I have known Jennifer for a few years now. And what is remarkable about Jennifer and her mother Leslie started when they found out that Leslie was suffering from lung cancer. She was diagnosed in 2005, quite by accident. She was a survivor of uterine cancer. And so she had gone in for a regular checkup, and that's when the lung cancer was diagnosed. And what Jennifer and Leslie saw as they embarked on this journey of trying to deal with it and her battling with this horrendous disease was the appalling lack of awareness and information and funding for the #1 cancer killer in the United States, partly because of the stigma associated with it. And mind you, Leslie was not a smoker. And they were determined to do something about it. So Jennifer started an organization called WTF for lung cancer. Where's the funding for lung cancer? It is the #1 cancer killer in the United States, but the least funded. And she and Leslie started trying to spread awareness about this by sharing Leslie's experiences and journey very courageously and openly on this site. Now, Jennifer doesn't live near her mother. She lives in Nebraska, and Leslie was in Phoenix. And on one of her trips, when Leslie was actually in Denver for a hospital visit, Jennifer was flying there to see her, and she carried with her 2 sock monkeys that her daughters had given her for Mother's Day because she loves sock monkeys. And she was so upset by the space that separated her and her mother that she wanted to give her sock monkeys to Leslie as a reminder that they would be with her always. She was so taken aback by how excited Leslie was that she decided to start a campaign to bring these sock monkeys to life. And it's called Sock Monkeys Against Cancer, SMAcancer.com. You should check it out. It's a startup, and like most startups, it needed cash. So Jennifer decided to crowdfund. And she started a campaign on the Start Something Good platform that ran through November to raise $35,000 so that these prototypes of Nomo and Phoenix could actually be shipped out to cancer patients around the country so that they would all have tangible reminders of the people who love them. I am thrilled to tell you that as of Thursday, the campaign achieved its goal of $35,000. And it was done primarily because Jennifer used her networks, her online communities, the relationships that she had built over the last several years to get the word out. It was really tough for her to get any kind of support from traditional cancer funding organizations because the money wouldn't be going to them. Leslie is dying. She was moved into hospice earlier this week. So she will never meet me or Tinu or Heather or so many of the people who have made her and Jennifer's dream come alive. But the space between us is non-existent. It seems to me that we all have 2 choices. We can either stand back and be intimidated by the space that separates us from who we are and our dreams, our hopes, and our goals, or we can reach out across the ether, bring the people we meet into our worlds, and become the people we were meant to be. I made my choice, and the choice you make is up to you. Thank you.